Is specialty cacao clearly defined?
No.
Okay.
As you can challenge yourself of what specialty coffee is, because it's specialty coffee according to who, right? And
Right.
specialty cacao according to who also is that we
Mm.
have to ask. And the reality right now is if you ask a specialty chocolate maker what is a specialty cacao, and you ask the neighbor, you're going to have two different answers.
If you're looking for a free way to support the work we do, bringing you conversations with our amazing guests on the Daily Coffee Pro podcast by Map It Forward, please subscribe, follow, and rate us wherever you listen to the podcast. It really helps us out. It's also a huge help if you share this episode and our social media content with your coffee friends. For links, check the show notes. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 3 of a fantastic 5-part series with Cesar, the Director of Cacao at Belco. We are talking about cacao in the volatile year that is 2025, and we're talking about it from the industry perspective, not from necessarily just the agricultural perspective. And there are a lot of parallels between coffee and cacao. Cesar, in the coffee industry, we have this differentiation that happens between, the commercial side of things or the conventional side of things and the specialty side of things. You're a coffee farmer. That's where you started with everything. So you're very familiar with this side of our industry. But it seems like there's this kind of movement that's been happening over maybe a decade, I would say, where people are starting to talk about specialty cacao and single origin cacao. And it really is very similar to what's going on in coffee. And in coffee, we have, other than in Brazil, the definition of specialty coffee is very ambiguous. In Brazil, it's very clear. The series that comes out before this one is with the president of the BSCA. Mm-hmm. And he was very, very clear with me what specialty coffee means in Brazil.
Yeah.
Is specialty cacao clearly defined?
No.
Okay.
As you can challenge yourself of what specialty coffee is, because it's specialty coffee according to who, right? And
right.
Specialty cacao according to who also is that we have to ask. And the reality right now is if you ask a specialty chocolate maker what is a specialty cacao, and you ask the neighbor, you're going to have two different answers. And this is very interesting, because it may have that the specialty cacao should have different answers. To put everything in one sentence, like it has to be X points and produce in this way, it tastes like that way, is just to put it in a very close environment. However, that for me is a specialty cacao. When you say a specialty, you are using the word special. Why something is special. This is very powerful. So a specialty coffee because it tastes 80 plus. Is that special, really? But what leads to the coffee to be 80 plus? That more interesting. In my opinion, is more interesting. In cacao is the same. Like cacao, different to coffee, the industry or the actors, they never managed to put a number. Like it's not from 0 to 100, from 0 to 10. Maybe COEX, Cacao of Excellence, they've been working a lot on that. And here and there, you have different actors that they've been trying, and hard to put everybody in the table with the same knowledge calibrated to say, okay, this is 8 points, Happen in small circles, but not it's not a general thing. So that for me, a special cacao, and then you remind that cacao comes from the forest. Cacao should be produced in agroforestry system. I believe in that. Personally, my colleagues believe in that. It's the way that we work. Cacao, and then you can make a podcast with a professional in agroforestry and hours and hours.
We do.
The forest is life, So Cacao should be in that environment. In France, they say le vivant, everything that is alive. Cacao should be alive. When you produce cacao, beans, sugarcane, coffee with no interaction, it's dead. It's not happening. Cacao is a very powerful plant that is alive and is good for our health and good for the planet. That's the way that cacao should produce. At the same time, cacao should give, it's a tool for people who work it, to have a very decent life. So we need to discover how cacao can be part of that concept. Like, what is to have a decent life? Like, of course, it's not the same if you have half an hectare and you have 200 hectares, that's super complex. But
different business models.
Yeah, at least in a small scale, if we talk about small scale, we have to be clear, okay, I can plant cacao, I can produce cacao, but I cannot live for cacao. Cacao producers should be capable to do that. And that, for me, just to understand that, it makes you part of something that is special also. Like, we are understanding this thing. If you don't understand it, just to be exposed to a possibility to understand that and not just stay the rest of your life thinking like one day one day somebody's gonna come and buy my cacao 10 times more expensive. That's not a really good panorama. It's not a good hope to have. It's more like, what can I do to have good level of life by producing cacao? So then understanding that is part of like we should take into consideration to describe specialty cacao. And as a consequence, a cacao should be delicious and should be clean. It's clean of pesticides, clean of any type of poison. And of course, and then you can jump to certifications, but I take my distance from certifications. I cannot tell you I'm anti, because I'm not anti-certification, but sometimes they work, a lot of the time they don't, because a lot of the time is if the producing area paying the certification, and it's not the opposite. It's not like the certification should pay the producer, and then it's another topic. That is what I consider.
You're being very diplomatic. You're being very diplomatic here.
You think? I don't know. I mean, what I'm telling you is like...
You did that very well.
I mean, yeah, maybe. But what I'm saying is like, you don't need to have certifications
right.
to have a special product, to have a special cacao. But everything that I'm telling you is part of a concept that if you put together, it's going to make a specialty cacao. It's going to be clean. It's going to be free of pesticides. It's going to provoke life, biodiversity. It's going to provoke food for the people working with cacao, which is very important, meaning that it's going to be well paid as a consequence. And it has to be delicious. Forget if it's fermented, percentage of fermentation, how it's dry. It has to be clean of fungus, clean of stones, clean of branches, clean of everything that can contaminate that cacao. So as a result, you're going to have a specialty cacao, something special, something to put value in the person producing this cacao or in the group of people producing this cacao.
When I think of the word specialty, when it's connected with anything, whether it's cacao or whether it's coffee, I feel like, and I may be completely wrong here, so let me know what you think about this, but when we say that something is specialty, I feel like what we're saying to the producer is that we feel that you deserve the dignity that is owed to you for going to the trouble of taking extra care with creating this thing that is different from the monocropped version of this.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
There needs to be like a connection between dignity and specialty. It almost as though it needs to be a part of the definition, but I feel like we're missing the target on that.
We are absolutely missing the target because right now we are focusing 88, 90, numbers.
Yeah.
We are it's we lose a little bit the map. The coffee has to be delicious. Cacao has to be delicious. And then it's super complex. What it means delicious. It's a very simple way to describe quality, but there is no one flavor in coffee. It's thousands. There is no one flavor in cacao. It's like, forget, like infinite, and the way that you treat that cacao, the way that everybody in this chain is treating that cacao, it should be special all the time. It can be, we cannot make mistakes, and we have to fight to don't make mistakes. Meaning, and it's super hard, because right now, Belco is the company that I'm working with is very sensitive to transport. So there is big project in sale, but it doesn't mean that the people not doing this is not doing a specialty, but for us, it's our work. Okay,
you're taking next level.
We focus there, and at the same time, like, okay, so just to think like what we can do to move this cacao in a better way, it's something special in my opinion. To think about it, but how to finance cacao. Right now, when you see the problem of producers in Africa, it's super common. There is no cash. There is never cash.
Yeah.
It's a cash problem. Like I can tell you, like the top 10 problems that the producer will have is no cash. And you can see it in South America. You see it often also. It's like, yeah, I can make a specialty cacao, but I don't have no cash, like...
right, I need the money for the inputs. I need the money to get the whole process moving.
And if you think a little bit, if you go backwards, how is possible that this group of people, cooperative, whatever organization, after 20 years, they don't have cash to work if they've been making profit in the last 20 years? Something happened there that something is wrong. Something is
1 + 1 = fish.
Yeah, it's not making sense, And then you can blame. It's very easy to say, no, but they are not organized. There is corruption. They are this, they are that. It's super easy to point, but when you are pointing them, you are pointing yourself also, because me, we are part of this vision.
We're participating, right?
Yeah. So the special thing is, okay, how we find an answer for this problematic, what we can do for this problematic. And the big industry of cacao, it's not really, the attention is not there, and to find problems for the problematic. And as a result, you see our reality today. Like, the problematic is not there. It's not that we've been worried to produce a specialty cacao. It's like, we don't even are worried to produce cacao in general, to be honest. It's like, we know that it's going to happen, and it's like...
Oh, right. So nobody's worried about whether there's going to be enough cacao. They just assume there is going to be enough cacao. Is that what you mean?
I mean, I think it's a very brutal way to provoke. It is convenient to plant cacao. Right now, like, everybody's going to tell you,
it's gold.
Good business. Let's plant cacao and let's jump into plant cacao. It is going to be good business to produce cacao in 20 years? That's, for me, is more interesting question. Like, are you sure? Are you 100% sure that in 20 years, produce cacao is going to be interesting for you?
Viable?
Yeah. That's another thing. It's going to be possible, right? And maybe not, or maybe yes, because all these things, like, we're not going to be able to produce something in the future. It's something that we have to question also. It may happen that we will find answers in nature, in science, about how to produce cacao in the future. And I think cacao is going to be there in 20 years for sure. And the focus is not well played, but because we don't have to produce cacao. There is no rule saying, like, we need to produce cacao. The reason why, like, more than half of the people producing cacao right now is not because they want it. And the proof is the way that cacao arrived to Europe is connected with the slaverism, when all these scandals,
colonialism.
all these scandals, it's not like the society decide like, okay, we understand this cultivar and here we have the solutions to plant this thing. No, it was bring it, and bring it to
Right.
feed power.
When we talk about specialty anything, as another thing here, when I think about cacao, cacao is a medicine. It is it wasn't consumed the way that we consume it today. It was because of the way that and the nature of the way that cacao grows. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Cacao takes the nutrients of the soil that it's in and it puts it in the seed,
Yeah.
and it becomes a very nutritious
Yeah.
medicine for all intents and purposes.
I mean, highly
Go ahead.
consumed 3,000 years ago. I can tell you in the region of Los Izalcos in El Salvador, you are talking about thousands of tons produced a couple of thousands of years ago.
Wow.
And that means that it's not for the royalty. It's for everybody, like everybody is
Everyone.
drinking, because it's a drink more than a solid thing, this food, because it's actually, and then you have these solid stories about how people was fed with cacao after being sick, for example, after or to avoid being sick. So then it becomes this medicinal part that is super important. And of course, all the properties of antioxidants and fat, very quality of fat that the cacao has. And the fat is gold. If cacao is gold, like fat is diamonds right now, the price of butter,
Yeah, the cacao butter. That's what everybody seems to be asking for.
Yeah, because it's highly used in cacao and in cosmetic. In both industries, butter has a huge impact in the way that you make chocolates or you make cosmetic products.
So in the next episode, folks, we're going to talk about the impact that specialty cacao has on a local economy where it's produced. And we're going to continue this conversation around specialty cacao and why it's doing what it's doing. So join us for the 4th episode in this series. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.